22 nations that either have a strong enough fighting heritage in MMA to include, or they just seem too big to leave off. We're going to look at the nation each fighter has chosen to represent primarily. So guys who have several nationalities either through their place of birth or their parents will be whittled down to one nation of eligibility. Some countries that just didn't produce enough great talents were left off, especially if the MMA scene there produced their one major star as an outlier. And if I miss any countries, we can always make a part 2. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. The United States of America. To kick things off, we're going to get the obvious one out of the way. The USA has produced more great MMA talent than any other country on this list, but at the very top of the pile is of course Jon Jones. He's the GOAT candidate to end all other GOAT candidates. He's a benchmark for greatness, and regardless of some very narrow decisions he won or the PED stuffs and all the controversies, I'm not picking anyone else. Canada. Another pretty straightforward one that I'm not going to waste too much time on. No, it's not Rory MacDonald, nor is it Olivier Aubin-Mercier. Georges St-Pierre gets the pick here. I barely need to explain this one. The man is a bona fide legend of the sport. Mexico. Mexico is a nation that's on a bit of a hot streak at the moment, with several elite fighters competing in and around the title picture in their respective divisions, with a few champions even coming to the surface. But even though he wasn't born there, the fact that Cain Velasquez represents Mexico is enough to give him the nod. Another pretty easy pick, with no disrespect intended, to Yair, Moreno or Grasso. Brazil. Brazil comes in second to the US in terms of producing a frankly ridiculous amount of talent. And once again, and trust me, there will be controversy eventually, but this was a pretty easy pick. Brazil has produced too many greats to list here, but Anderson Silva is without question the greatest. Another GOAT candidate, and let's just move on. China. China doesn't have the rich history within the UFC that some of its neighbours do, but there have been standouts over the years that have fought in a wide range of promotions. But their biggest modern star and their most successful at the highest level is of course Zhang Weili, and for that reason she gets the pick. The United Kingdom. The UK did take a while to really get things moving in the right direction as a scene, but once their first champion Michael Bisping managed to break through, it seemed as though the floodgates opened as far as elite British talents were concerned. Maybe the likes of Arnold Allen or Tom Aspinall can follow Bisping and Leon Edwards to UFC Gold, but for now, Bisping is the pick, a total trailblazer. Germany. Germany is not a country that is known for producing top-level MMA talent, but over the years we have seen a few guys do pretty well. Daniel Weichel in Bellator, Nasrat Haqparast, Pascal Kraus, but despite him becoming something of a punchline thanks to Conor McGregor's absolute drubbing of him, Dennis Siver was in the UFC for 10 years and actually beat some pretty good guys during that time. So Siver gets the nod here, and though it wasn't always pretty, he has most certainly earned his mention. Italy. Italy might have given us the Italian stallion Rocky Balboa, but in MMA only a handful of its fighters have actually broken through into the elite levels. A guy like Alessio Sakara gets a mention, but I do have to side with Marvin Vettori here. He's fought for UFC Gold, and though it didn't go well for him, his resume is pretty damn good. Nigeria. Nigeria does have a few strong candidates, especially in recent times, but to be honest, for as much as Kamaru Usman is a close second, you gotta give the spot to the recently dethroned Israel Adesanya. It is very close though, especially now that both men have lost their titles. France. Another nation that is certainly making a rise in recent times is France, and though they have yet to truly make their mark, the French do have a former UFC interim heavyweight champion in Cyril Gane who gets the vote, although Manon Fiorot could well earn her own slice of UFC history when she inevitably fights for flyweight gold. Poland. Poland is a real hotbed for MMA talent, and over the years, we've watched a few truly excellent Polish fighters making a real splash. But for as much as the second Polish champion Jan Blachowicz deserves his mention, the strawweight GOAT Joanna Jędrzejczyk is the best to ever do it. A bona fide legend of women's MMA and the sport as a whole. Australia. Australia is really enjoying a strong wave of talent right now, with UFC 293 proving the health of the scene. But for as much as there have been excellent talents over the years from down under, the clear winner here is Alexander Volkanovski. He's just too talented, too well proven, and who knows, he might push it that bit further before all is said and done. New Zealand. We actually have a few examples of fighters who are either born in New Zealand or train in New Zealand, but don't actually represent them when they fight, or at least primarily. And though he does have allegiances that stretch beyond New Zealand, the legend Mark Hunt is the nation's biggest fighting hero, a hard-nosed but skillful kickboxer whose highlight reel is the sort of thing you need to see to believe. Japan. Japanese MMA had a heyday in the mid-2000s that it has since struggled to replicate. And though we have seen some truly excellent Japanese fighters over the years, I can't pick anyone in the place of the great Kazushi Sakuraba. This guy was involved in some of the greatest MMA spectacles of his era, and though I am a Kyoji Horiguchi fan, Sakuraba gets the nod here, without question. Ireland. Next up we have Ireland, my own home, and a country that is still in the process of growing as an overall MMA scene. Obviously the pick goes to Conor McGregor by a landslide, but a lot of the young kids who watched this man do his best work were so young at the time that they're yet to even go pro, so I do take a lot of comfort in the knowledge that the scene is clearly growing. I worked closely with the Irish MMA scene during my time as a journalist, and at the amateur level and the early pro level, today, I can confidently say that the future is bright. Sweden. Sweden has a sneakily strong MMA heritage, with several very solid fighters still operating at a high level. But for my money, it's easy to call the mauler Alexander Gustafsson the clear winner here. The dude fought for UFC gold 3 times and gave John Jones the hardest and most determined challenge of his career. And to this day, his 5th round triple uppercut of Glover Teixeira might just be my favorite knockout ever. Definitely in the top 5. Croatia. Croatia is up next, another nation that has a few standouts, and no, Stipe Miocic, despite having the heritage, does not count. He represents the US. That of course leaves the mighty Mirko Krokop, a Pride legend whose infamous striking ability was the stuff of nightmares for his contemporaries. Mirko is of course an easy winner here, a total legend of a golden era within mixed martial arts. Cuba. Next we go to Cuba, where we've definitely seen some very solid talents over the years, but despite the existence of the former Bellator champion Hector Lombard, who was pretty great up until he totally fell apart, there's no argument other than Yoel Romero here. On another day, this absolutely massive man could have come away with the UFC title after that terrible fight against Israel Adesanya, and oddly enough, a lot of close decisions seem to go against him, obviously with his weird fighting style being a major factor in that. South Korea. South Korean fighters have truly been responsible for some of the greatest battles in the history of MMA. I don't know if there's something in the water out there, but all things considered, this is yet another easy pick. The 2-time UFC title challenger Chan Sung-jung, the Korean Zombie, is most certainly getting the nod. An all-time great action fighter who had a real technical underbelly to everything he did. The Netherlands. Okay, so this one was kinda tough. The Netherlands have given us a lot of very, very good fighters, but in my mind I whittled it down to either Bas Rutten or Alistair Overeem. One managed to win UFC gold after a long career in Pancrase and then retired early, but the other, despite not winning UFC gold, is undeniably one of the great combat sports icons of his time and stretched his career far longer than he had any right to. I am going to go with Alistair Overeem because of his longevity and the sheer amount of great fighters he beat over the years, but this one was very, very close. Russia. And finally we come to the main event. By far and away the toughest pick of the lot. You all know who's involved here. It's Fedor Emelianenko versus Khabib Nurmagomedov, and I've gone back and forth on this one several times. I've had each of their names written on paper and then scribbled out. First up, Fedor fought at heavyweight and went unbeaten for about a decade, fighting some dodgy cans, yes, but also fighting some of the greatest to ever do it. And he did this in the riskiest division in the sport. You just can't make mistakes at heavyweight the way that you can at lightweight. But if we are to move on to Khabib, it's not like he was making mistakes either, and he was doing it in a much more technical division. Sure, he also padded his record before the UFC, but it doesn't really matter that much to be honest, because man, that final stretch of form he had in the top flight was some of the highest levels of MMA we've ever seen. He did retire too early, and I do hold that against him, but for as much as I think it was harder to do what Fedor did by going unbeaten at heavyweight for a decade, I still think Khabib is the better fighter of the two, and he gets my pick for that reason. But man, is this one close. Newer fans tend to sleep on what Fedor actually did, but anyways, that's the end of the video. So which picks do you agree with or take issue with the most? And would you like to see a part 2 where we take on some other countries? And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave us a like and a comment before subscribing to the channel so you don't miss a single upload. Thanks for watching.